Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is Roush, and welcome back to the pre-postseason interviews, if you will. This time we have
I'm DralZx, captain of the Blackpool Blastoise.
a good boy. So that's his beautiful Blastoise logo we got up here, and let's go ahead and start talking about your team. So you have Clefable, Suicune, Arcanine, Roserade, Cofagrigus, Probopass, Mega Heracross with Raikou, Latias, Crocodile, and Talonflame. And you did not make any mid-season trades, so you pretty much went with this squad from day one. What did you like about it?
It's hard to build against because there's a lot of type coverage and a lot of threatening mons. I always like taking bulky Pokemon. I don't know why. It's just the way I like it. So I like Clefable and Suicune. Arcanine can be bulky if you want him to be as well. So yeah, I like bulky mons, and I always try and get as much type coverage as possible. So never easy to build against.
Sounds good to me. Do you want to walk through each Pokemon and say what you liked about using each one in particular? Like, just go down the list and give a small synopsis on using that particular one.
Yeah, I mean, Clefable, I just like calm minding to death and then sweeping. It's really clumsy but simple. Suicune, I used to like doing the same, but I switched up a bit halfway through the season and went with a Specs offensive build with speed. Arcanine, generally like, being banded or scarfed with like Flare Blitz and stuff like that. Roserade was one of my main scarfers, pretty threatening, although didn't do as much damage as I would like in certain scenarios. Cofagrigus was just there for type coverage mostly, and a bit of a stall out mon more than anything, but he did his job well when he was needed. Probopass, I liked. It did one thing, which was kill a Charizard, which I was pretty happy about, and yeah, apart from that, it was mostly filler. Mega Heracross is slow, which is its biggest downside, but it hits like a truck and did its job well, I guess, when it needed to. Raikou was probably the one I was most disappointed with out of Latias, just because I don't think I got the best out of them. Both of them were played similarly. Latias was kind of like the more threatening, I guess, but Raikou was a bit slow with substitute set, like Latias was usually life orbed. Crocodile was another sweeper with Choice Scarf. It was like Earthquake knockoff, pretty standard set. And Talonflame was, I mean, it's Smoke on Bird. Everyone knows what you do with Talonflame, except for me apparently in that final match.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna chalk that up to a miscalc, because I went back and looked at the calcs myself, and for context, the going into the last 2 weeks of the season, Drawls was in a playoff spot, but he was still battling out with Amoeba and the Wolverhampton Waddlers. But in terms of the final match, we had Crustle versus literally Drawls' entire team. Amoeba needed to get either a 5-0 or a 6-0, so he was forced to just go all out offensive. He brought a fantastic set, Shell Smash Crustle with Agua Berry, but Talonflame would have killed, but for some reason, like went back and did the calcs. If you had managed to put in the calculator that the defense drop hadn't have happened, then Talonflame was not killing the Crustle, and I assume something similar to that reason, you didn't think that it would kill. You waited and waited and waited to bring in Talonflame until you said you were banking on a Stone Edge miss, so that you could kill it.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. Like against the first time I played Amoeba, Talonflame got me the win right at the end, and I was kind of hoping he would do the same this time. So I didn't bring him in. I thought he might have killed. I didn't do the calc. I thought he probably would kill, but I didn't want to bring him in. If I could avoid it, I wanted to save him for Buzzwole in particular. I wanted to save him for.
Oh yeah, because if you lost your Gale Wings, then Choice Scarf Bozzy
Yeah,
would have
yeah,
outsped. That's
he'd have
true.
messed me up.
Hmm.
So I was trying to save it for Buzzwole if I could, and I thought if I could just get like an Intimidate off, that would stop
Which,
the
in my
sweep,
opinion,
especially.
like if you were going on that assumption, 100% going for Intimidates on Arcanine was the play. But unfortunately, the match ended in a 5-0, and you missed out on the playoffs a single um, by a single point on the differential, which is actually heartbreaking. I'm gonna call it the most disappointing um, loss that I have seen in my Pokemon career. It was,
Yeah,
uh, there were very, very little things that you could actually do, especially if Amoeba had played even a little bit cautiously around Talonflame. Unfortunately, it just not getting the pressure early enough, and the exact set that he brought with Crustle um, forced
yeah,
you to miss playoffs. So I do
yeah,
want to
pretty
say a
much.
couple of things about the Mons. So in terms of post draft, you like we talked about, you didn't make any trades. I made these comments on your draft. This team has a ton of potential. Great walling potential with Latias Clefable Probopass with the Fairy Dragon Steel Core, giving brilliant support for each other's weaknesses. Offensive Breaker Firewater Grass Core with Arcanine, Suicune, Roserade, under the radar threatening. Mega Heracross is always a must watch when it comes to breaking down slower defensive teams. Pair all this with great cleaning options in Raikou and Crocodile. Nobody wants to play opposite of this squad. Unfortunately, and I feel like, for example, how often have you been playing Pokemon in between our tournaments, our yearly tournaments?
Literally zero. Like the only
Yeah,
experience I've had with
yeah,
battling is PSR.
yeah. So I feel like in terms of how you played over the course of the season, you could chalk it up to not using or not knowing how to use most of the mons, which you've also expressed. Um, but in terms of draft, it was fantastic. You just couldn't find a way um, to play them over the course of the season. But one mon in particular that you used very well, and it's going to be our Pokemon Spotlight for you. Week 9 versus Ranger Squid. The Choice Banded, ignore the nickname, there's no nickname, Arcanine, with Iron Head, Flare Blitz, Extreme Speed, and the mother of all fighting moves, Close Combat. With you had Max Attack Adamant with Max Speed. Any particular reason for that entire spread and those attacks?
Um, it's got like really good coverage. If I recall, there wasn't anything because sometimes I take Wild Charge, but there wasn't anything really that would warrant me needing to take Wild Charge on Ranger Squid's team. So I just wanted to go all out speed, all out attack, and just do as much damage as possible. And yeah, Close Combat did that for me.
All right, so let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the match itself. So we're going to break it up here on the 26th turn. So as you can see, Ranger Squid has Rain Core with Politoed and Mega Swampert. The Skarmory is in against Suicune, and we're going to go ahead and kick it off here. So it gets the burn with here as Skarmory goes for the Whirlwind and drags out the Arcanine. Why did you click Close Combat here?
I think I calced it. I knew that Flare Blitz was technically the better move, but I anticipated the switch, and I didn't want to, Flare Blitz in the rain against Politoed or Mega Swampert. So I thought Close Combat means I'm not taking any damage, and it's probably the most damage I can get out.
And I mean, like, you rode this Close Combat for a few turns. Like, honestly, there's something poetic about, oh my gosh, I did it again. Just the fact that Ranger completely underestimated the power of this Choice Bandit Close Combat, and he kept trying to set up for I have no clue what. Because he had all the spikes and everything in place, but he just took forever to apply enough pressure to kill you. But in the end, he was just a really bulky Swampert. So, I mean, it was just a hard time for him breaking through. And then going for the close combat spam netted you enough pressure to eventually win the match 2-0. In my opinion, it was very, very solid play, just sticking with Arcanine and being patient and not fearing being standing in front of Rain Squad. So
Yeah,
let's go ahead.
it was scary.
Yeah, it took a lot of balls to stay poised against that. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the playoff bracket right now. So unfortunately, your name isn't listed on here. Again, that kind of makes me sad. I feel like you should have been here. But in terms of the bracket itself, what do you expect? Who do you expect is your final four?
Probably. I think you're looking at the Jigglypuffs for sure.
Okay.
I don't see them not being in the finals. I think you've got a great chance. Nothing against Meebs, but you know he plays Mono Bug, and it's admirable because he does insane. I can't believe how well he does with Mono Bug. It's crazy.
It is.
But I think you'll have his number. I think Haze Clan will get there.
I like Haze Clan versus the Clawhetzers too.
Yeah.
I know that
I'm unsure for the fourth spot.
I know that one's kind of a bizarre type scenario.
Yeah. That one could go anywhere.
Yeah. That was honestly the one that I was having trouble coming up with the answer to myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Any of those three, I feel like, has the potential to beat the other two.
Definitely.
So
maybe Snips has the edge. Maybe.
You like Snips?
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of like Sun Rakasha in that scenario.
Yeah.
Just because he's got a way to deal with like Gyarados. He's got ways of dealing with Gorgon's particular team members, but Gorgon is such a opportunistic battler. He's played really well this season, so I feel like he can work around it. But I feel like just the fact that Sun has some great answers to a couple of his main pivotal pokes would get Sun Rakasha the advantage there. So out of that, did you say you thought Dolphin would win the whole thing?
I think so, yeah. I think
you think Dolphin is going to win?
Consistently just crushing it all season. I don't see how he doesn't win. No offense to anybody else, but I think he's proven that he's got the team. He understands how to use it well. So yeah. I think he's got a great shot.
I agree with you. I like Battle Dolphin making it to finals. Looking at potentially me versus Amoeba, I feel like I don't have enough pressure to be able to defeat his Mons. In seasons past, I've had one Mon that really wrecks Mono Bug. This time, I don't. I really don't. And then, especially against Dolphin, I don't have an answer to Scolipede if he brings the right coverage, which Dolphin's smart enough. There's no way he's not. So I agree with you. I like Dolphin winning the entire tournament. And we'll drop back to your team for a little bit. I'm going to say a couple things, and then I'll give you your season grade. So, obviously, Clefable, I think you played relatively well. There were just a couple of times where you managed to pick the wrong ability at the wrong time. There was just some problems with that. Suicune, kind of a cookie cutter type Mon. You're either bringing it for like rest talk defensive tank or offensive specs. I feel like you never really varied it enough to leave people guessing, and because of that, it never really gave off enough pressure mid-matches. People weren't really afraid of it. Similar thing with Arcanine. There's power in the versatility that it could have, whether it be on the tanking side or the offensive side. You just never really used the potential things that it could have done to your advantage. Roserade is a great lead spiker type and a wall breaker type, especially with Technician. I know you used Technician Hidden Power a couple of times really well, but I feel like you could have used it a little bit better for offensive pressure, as Roserade can do really well against stall type teams. Cofagrigus was just a really weird pick for you, especially because you had Toxic Spikes, but the only way you had to clear hazards was Defog. So I felt like Cofagrigus was just kind of that odd man out, and like you only brought it to a single match. So I think you
Yeah.
used it in terms of your team about as much as I would expect. Probopass was a very nice niche pick. I think you used it well in the few matches that you did. Like you said, you got the singular kill against a Megazord Y. Just using it not entirely the way somebody would expect, but also taking advantage of its um, positive qualities, that defensive prowess with enough special attack to deal good damage on a stab quad. Super effective hit. Was really good. Mega Heracross is, honestly, I feel like this is not the kind of Mega that you really needed on this team. I feel like if you had more of a squad that could help lower speed, maybe Sticky Webs or a couple of Thunder Waver type Pokemon, Heracross could have done a little bit better. I feel like it was just an odd pick in and amongst everything else. Raikou was a fantastic pick for the squad, especially because it complements Roserade's ability to lay spikes and toxic spikes out on the field. Not at the same time, but Roserade being able to lay those out could open the door for Raikou. But I feel like you misplayed Raikou when you tried using it more for mid-game pressure rather than keeping it for late game. Because Raikou isn't the greatest wall breaker type because its coverage moves are rather weak, but it can be an excellent cleaner just because it has good coverage. Latios would be better as a mid-game Pokemon. I feel like you tried to use it more for an end-game style. Just a couple of things that I would have changed while using Latios, because in terms of defense in the mid-game, it's pretty good. Crocodile is another one of those. It could be either used as an early game Stealth Rock setter / hazard preventer with like a taunt kind of set. I feel like you never used the versatility that Crocodile can bring to the best of its ability again. But you did use a Moxie type cleaner set well, and I do appreciate that. And Talonflame's a Talonflame. It's really hard to misplay it, except if you just miscalc or something. But now that you explain in terms of, well, if I lose Talonflame, then I lose to Scarf Buzzwole, it makes a whole lot of sense. And I think you played it really well for the few times that you brought Talonflame. So in terms of grades, in team building, you did mostly set around being bulky and then sweeping. Mainly setup mons, couple of niche pickers and breakers like that Arcanine that we featured. Spike's Roserade, you used it a couple times. It was an okay compliment here and again. But you didn't really rely on bringing the exact same 6 every time. You reliably brought a similar 4 or 5, but the fact that you rotated all the other picks around did lead to versatility in numbers, and that really helped a couple of team builds be a little more difficult. I feel like something that you've fallen onto in a couple of seasons past was you would just bring the exact same mons every single time, and people would be ready for that. I feel like you branched out a little bit more this season, and I think that shows a little bit of growth as a draft player. And you drafted the depth to be able to show off the versatility in numbers. So in terms of draft, you did a fantastic job. It was just maybe more learning about what particular Pokemon can do. I feel like next season, should you choose to join, and I seriously hope that you do, just talk to some people and ask for team building advice. I know tons of people who would be more than willing to help you mock battle, mock build, whatever it takes. But overall, in terms of your team build, I went ahead and gave you a B+, just because I feel like a lot of your builds themselves were relatively solid, and most of the time stood a chance to win against any opponent. In terms of match execution, you tended to get really aggressive and super greedy. You would often go for setups in suboptimal situations, like even if you didn't know what mon was staring you in the face, like you would still try and set up Clefable. And early on in the season, we were talking about Suicune. You would often lead to them getting backed into a corner by trying to get too aggressive for setups too early in the game. But you were never afraid to take a sack a Pokemon to get into more positive matchups. I think that was a good thing. Like, sometimes having the patience was good, but there were times that you would get ultra patient, and that would lead to not having enough offensive pressure to finish matches sometimes. And again, like I talked about on the individual scale, some Pokemon you played behind their potential. So in terms of match execution, I went ahead and gave you a C+. But I feel like in terms of people who playing around, I feel like you played better than a lot of other teams. It was just a terrible division to end up in. I feel like if you had been put in a different division, we would not be talking about you on the outside looking in, like, for sure. I think if you were in any other division, you would be in the playoffs right now. And overall, I'm going to go ahead and grant you a B-. That is the wrong button. But overall, a B-, just because you were so close to breaking it. I feel like in any other scenario, we would be talking about how do you beat Ranger Squid in round 1. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, I think.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Draws. I look forward to seeing you again next season. I will see y'all later. Roush is out. Peace.